will only say a few words. I believe plenty of time for discussion or contradictions. I'll say some things about globalization and the media, but I should make it clear that in referring to the media, and also when I write about the media, I really have in mind the general moral and intellectual culture of which the media are the most visible representative, and the one that is easiest to study because of the quantity and the ability to do extensive analysis and so on. But the comments are intended to be more general, as when I write about it. With regard to globalization, we have to recognize first that the term has two quite different meanings. There is, first of all, a technical meaning, literal meaning, and there is, secondly, what we might call a propagandistic meaning. It's the second, that's the one that's used. The first one is ignored. That's rather typical. Almost every term of political discourse has the same two meanings, a literal meaning and one that's actually used. And part of the role of the media, intellectual culture, in reshaping our picture of the world so that we don't actually understand what's happening, is to keep to the propagandistic term and to avoid the literal meaning. And this is true very generally. So, for example, take currently one of the most widely used terms and concepts is terror. Every day there's lots of talk about terror and the war on terror. The war on terror was, ever since the war on terror was declared, I've been writing about it in many books and articles, and I've been using the technical meaning of terror, the literal meaning of terror. And it is quite well defined. For example, it's defined in the U.S. government code and in army manuals and in the British government official documents and other places. And the definitions are more or less similar. I won't bother spelling them out to you. They have the obvious meaning. You can look them up in things I've written. In fact, somebody told me today that one book of mine about this is just coming out in German. It's called Pirates and Emperors. It was written in 1986, 5 years after the War on Terror was declared. The War on Terror was declared in 1981 by the same people who redeclared it in 2001. And it's updated to bring it to the present. That book is called Pirates and Emperors, and that is intended to indicate the two meanings of the word terror. The phrase comes from St. Augustine, who tells a story of Alexander the Great and a pirate who is brought before the great emperor, and the emperor asks the pirate, "How dare you trouble the seas?" And the pirate answers by saying, "I have a small boat, so I'm called a pirate. You have a navy, so you're called an emperor. How dare you trouble the seas?" And that's approximately the way the word terror is used. So in the literal meaning, it's very easy to show that the great powers, the United States primary among them because of its power and influence, are also the leading terrorists. But they're carrying out the terror of the emperor. And we restrict ourselves in discussing the matter to the terror of the pirate. The terror of the pirate can be pretty severe, but it doesn't come close to the terror of the emperor. And in that book from 1986, I gave many examples, and it's updated to the present with many more examples. What's interesting is that it doesn't matter how clear the facts are or how uncontroversial they are. We must keep to the propagandistic meaning. Terror is the way it's used to refer to their terror against us, not our terror against them. And that's independent of who uses it. So Japanese imperialists in North Asia and Manchuria described what they were doing as defending the population against the terror of the Chinese bandits who were attacking the legitimate government and the population. The Nazis condemned the terror of the partisans, and they were defending the legitimate governments of the population against their terror. And it's, as far as I know, it's universal. It's used by the United States too, and by other well-behaved countries, and their journals, in referring to Western terror. That doesn't exist by definition. It's only the terror of the pirate that exists. And this is true no matter how clear the cases are. Take, say, a completely uncontroversial case, the U.S. war against Nicaragua, conducted by the people who are now in power in Washington again. That one's uncontroversial. It came to the International Court of Justice, World Court, which condemned the United States for international terrorism, ordered it to terminate the crime, and pay massive reparations. The U.S. government, including that's the people in power now, responded by escalating the terror and officially directing it against what they called soft targets, meaning undefended civilian targets. And it went on to become a horrendous terrorist war. After the World Court judgment.
Nope.
After the World Court, the U.S. rejected the World Court condemnation. Nicaragua brought it to the United Nations Security Council, where there were two successive resolutions, affirming the court judgment and ordering all states to observe international law. The U.S. vetoed it. So that's the end of that discussion. If anyone has any belief in international law, the International Court of Justice, the Security Council, and so on, then this is an uncontroversial case. But it's not counted in the annals of terrorism because it was the emperor, not the pirate. And the same is true of other examples. And so, for example, the U.S. terrorist war against Cuba, which has been going on since the Kennedy administration, and is still going on, doesn't count in the annals of terror. It's very serious, but it doesn't count. The Kennedy administration, its objective was to bring the terrors of the earth to Cuba. The phrase is not mine. The phrase is from historian Arthur Schlesinger, a Kennedy advisor, highly respected historian. And this is in his biography of Robert Kennedy, the Attorney General, the President's brother, who was assigned the responsibility for the terrorist war and took it as his highest priority to bring the terrors of the earth to Cuba. And they were very serious. In fact, it almost led to the nuclear war. And they continued until today, but it doesn't count. And the same is true of even minor cases, sort of so small that you don't notice them. So, for example, Clinton's bombing of the Sudan in 1998 destroyed about half of the country's pharmaceutical supplies and certainly led to casualties. Germany had an ambassador there. He went from the Sudan to Harvard University, where he was a fellow of a major international relations center, and he published an article in the Harvard International Review on this topic, in which he estimated the number of dead at several tens of thousands. Similar estimates have been given by the few other independent authorities who bothered to discuss it. But killing several tens of thousands of people is not considered a terrorist act. If Al-Qaeda blew up half the pharmaceutical supplies in any country that mattered,